to Beyond the Ring, a podcast that covers all things in the stock show industry from the informative to the insane, starring Ryan Rash.
Some people are as deep as a melted ice cube.
And Dale Hummel.
Relativity applies to physics, not ethics.
Now on with the show.
Welcome to Beyond the Ring. This is Dale Hummel, along with co-star Ryan Rash.
Hello, hello, hello.
Ryan, do you have any current events you'd like to lead off with today?
I know nothing about any current events. I've had a birthday, a wedding, a graduation party. I've judged shows. I know nothing. Nothing. So you tell me what's happening and I'll tell you what I think about it. Other than that, yeah, I'm out.
I am excited.
Oh.
You want some more news? I have some.
I didn't say I wanted news. I just didn't figure we were going to get you to shut up about it. So I said, you just tell me what you want to talk about and I'll tell you what I think about it.
There's something that broke this week that crossed almost everything off my current events in my head. It just threw the rest out. Here we go.
Oh, the UFOs.
No, UAP hearing started this week in Congress. That is UFOs in your terminology. Same thing.
Uh-huh.
And it was
Hence, people, why I haven't watched the news, because I knew I was going to hear about that shit from Dale the whole time.
This came on this morning. They covered some of the hearings live. I was able to watch most of it. What brought this upon a congressional hearing, which there has not been one in over 50 years on UFOs, UAPs, or anything of that nature. 144 confirmed military sightings could no longer just be covered up. And consequently, that information, as we've heard the last pretty much 2 years, has been coming out. And Congress finally decided they have to address it, and they're going to hold a hearing on it. And this was very telling, even though they had a public hearing that would be followed by a closed-door hearing. So they had 4 or 5 officials, Under Secretary of Defense to the Deputy Secretary of the Navy, many higher-up officials that would assumably be in the know of a lot of things. They were there to take questions from the congressmen and women. So with this, the one that I thought was maybe as telling as any was the Deputy of Naval Defense, Scott Bray. Some of the most stark statements came from him, Ryan, and he seemed to be more willing to just throw it out there, where others were much more reserved and cautious with what they said. So I tried to read between the lines as much as I could, but one of the statements he brought out is, or a quote from him, "These reported sightings that have been observed in our training ranges are real, and we've taken them serious for many years. They just they didn't talk about it publicly, period." I get it. I'm not arguing whether they should or shouldn't, but he acknowledged that this is something that's real. There's no question. There's something there. We don't claim to know what it is, but there's something there, and we've been trying to figure it out. They've brought experts in from every field they can to examine all the evidence, trying to determine just what it is. That's what they claim anyway. So with that said, it's interesting because the congressmen and women that were there asking questions, some of them asked tough questions. I am convinced the members of Congress do not know. They have not yet been given this classified information. There's a certain percentage of them that are going behind closed doors with these officials and can ask questions, and I'm sure they will learn a lot more. But just like what we saw, Ryan, in the Supreme Court leak, the more people that know this, it's going to leak out. That just is what it is. So I think they're keeping those numbers down to a certain degree. I'm not saying they're trying to cover everything up, but there's no question that some of those questions, if it was a difficult question, a lot of it was diverted to that will be more appropriately answered behind closed doors. Do you accept that, Ryan?
Yeah, sure.
I am all in completely on it, and a very serious note, because with what we have here, finally, and here's another one. The Secretary of Naval Defense, Scott Bray, again, indicated the evidence that we have, some of it you can touch, some of it you cannot. That's going pretty far. I have no idea what that means, but he's not going to throw those kind of statements out there. Another question was posed by a congressman. Have we had any direct collisions with any of these UAPs? And the answer came back, no, but we've had 11 near misses. So there's no question they're throwing it out there. These things exist. I want to go just a little bit deeper from the standpoint that the entire portion that I watched, which was public, not behind the closed doors, obviously, the officials continued to allude to several different things. It could be from aerial phenomenons to commercial something or another that we're unaware of being developed, to China are adversaries that have advanced technology to aliens. There's all these things. But at the end, you could almost narrow it down. They pushed the narrative, Ryan, that if you were to listen to everything that they were saying publicly, they are pushing the narrative that it was probably an adversary, and they're referring to China, that would have this kind of technology. The problem with this is these sightings have been going on for 20 plus years that they've acknowledged, and there is no way. We talk about, experts have come out and said the way these objects are moving and their method of going from point A to B defies anything we understand about physics. So how could China be that far ahead, even now, let alone 20 years ago? So even though they kept pushing the narrative that way, I'm very questionable on that. I don't buy into it. If China had this, Ryan, would they not have used? Why would they worry about taking over the world? They have the technology to do so whenever they choose.
Okay, so you're telling me China is the aliens?
No, I'm telling you that was the narrative they were pushing. Not all of them, but let's say 3 of the 5 officials were throwing it that was kind of the direction they were answering their questions, that they did not believe it was extraterrestrial, that it was something here, and it was not. They confirmed it was not our military. It was nothing our government was doing. They assumed it'd be adversaries. And they admitted this. They've been flying over our bases for over 20 years, and they're saying it's somebody that Russia, China, I don't think Russia has the technology, but China would have more likely a chance to develop something like that.
Okay, this is all I have to say about this, is if China is the aliens, you are dying first. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, that is possible. That is absolutely possible. They talked about Project Blue Book to clarify that, yeah, we've investigated things. This was something that's never disclosed until I think more recently. But the United States Air Force was systematically studying all these flying objects from 1952 through 1969. And none of that, to my knowledge, I don't know where all that data is or anything more about that, but that came up several times. And I would love to hear what's behind closed doors. What it comes down for me is it's either extraterrestrial or we have an adversary that is so much further advanced than we are that it's hard for me to accept. There's one long shot that I hope to God it could be, that we've made these advancements and only a small section of the military are working with it, and the rest of it obviously is unaware. So the portion of the military pilots that are unaware are seeing some of these experiments take place that they are not supposed to see, and somehow we have to cover this up. So hopefully it's our government that's made those technological advancements. I don't believe that to be it, but that's my rainbows unicorn positive portion of it.
Okay.
The other theory is, guess what's going to happen in over the next year?
Oh my God!
Think about the Supreme Court.
Please tell me. I won't be able to sleep tonight unless you tell me.
It goes back to things that we've talked about in I guess our history or how people react. Do you think
you need to get on like a different podcast and just talk about aliens?
I would love to.
I think you should just make your own.
The final thing
and talk about aliens.
What happens if they come out and confirm that there's aliens? Boom. They're worried about public or the population of the world panicking. What if they bring something up like this?
It's a little late.
There's not that absolute, hey, we have been ahead. We've had aliens observing us for 100 or thousands of years.
Stop.
Maybe they're leaking it out slowly.
Stop.
Yes, I'm done with those.
There is another form of intelligent life somewhere that we have not had a formal encounter with. Man, I'm convinced.
You do not have evidence of that.
I'm saying the aliens have had a formal encounter with you, and you don't know it. They like in the Men in Black movie, took the little thing and said, "Look here," and whatever.
Oh my!
But
this is possible.
But here's the whole thing. Until they come down here and start shit, what the hell does it matter?
I assume if they're here, they've been here for thousands of years, and that explains a lot of things in history that we couldn't explain. They're just observing us.
If I was an alien, I would look down here and go, "Oh shit, no, I ain't going anywhere near that."
I agree completely. I just if that is real, and I don't know. I do not know if it's an adversary, if it's our government or an alien. I do not know. It is
not an adversary. They would have taken over the world, blown us all to bits, it'd be over with.
Okay, so then you're narrowed down to 2. It's either alien or our government.
I've said there's another form of intelligent life somewhere.
Answer the question. Alien or our government? Which do you believe it to be. That's
you
all that's
think
left.
Our government is covering this up?
I think they would try to cover up now, first off, I don't believe they have that technology, but if they did, yes, I believe they would not
then you
want it out.
answered your own question. It's not our government. You just said they don't have that technology. It's not our
I
government.
don't believe that they do. I hope they do, but I do not believe they do. No, it's where it's at. Other things. What do you think about the supermarket shooting? Our President Biden comes out and calls it domestic terrorism. I'm good with that. But guess what? He never, to my knowledge, maybe you could correct me. Do you remember the New York subway shootings just recently, a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, they were, yeah.
You want to know what Biden said about those?
No, don't.
Nothing.
I don't want to hear what Biden has to say about anything, to be real honest with you.
There's no question in my mind that if they can go down this domestic terrorism, white supremacy road, somebody's told them, let's go down the white supremacy road, and that will win us elections. And that's the direction we're going.
I have good news and bad news. Like that
I just want the good. I'm wore out on the bad.
So Ted Budd won the primary in North Carolina for the Republicans after Trump endorsed him, which that's great. Still Trump matters and kingmaker and whatever, all this stuff. You know what the bad news is about this?
No.
If he can get somebody that I've never heard of before with a name Ted Budd,
I've not heard of this person ever.
Over a very crowded field, his daughter-in-law would have mopped the floor with them, and she seriously considered running for Senate. I was greatly disappointed when she did.
I think she'd do well.
Oh.
I think she's very well-spoken, very intelligent. I'm there.
Yeah, I'm the most sad she didn't. But still, the guy Trump picked one. That's all the news that I have. That's it. That's all I know.
Relative to that, I saw a poll that came out today. I don't remember where it was from, but they compared Biden's 36% approval with as far as people that view him favorable. And I think that was all that Trump had as well. It was shockingly very similar. I have a hard time believing it.
No, that's not right. The lowest Trump's approval rating was at the end, and it was never below 39.
Yeah, I'm not saying not in office. They're saying now. And again, I'm not saying
they're saying
the poll.
Yeah, yes. I don't believe that either.
To me, when he's endorsing some of these candidates,
and they're winning,
but again, remember that's the Republican base that he's talking to. It
doesn't matter.
Oh, they're going to listen to him way more than the rest.
Nobody wants Biden to go anywhere near them.
I agree. I think that's a great plan on their part, too.
Seriously, they're going to ask him, as the elections gets closer and closer, to go back to his basement in Delaware.
I believe I heard he endorsed one candidate a few days ago or a week ago.
I bet they said, I didn't want it. I didn't ask for it.
That is just crazy, crazy, crazy. I have a lot of China things that I'm maybe
going to save. Let's go ahead.
No, I'll save that for next time. We've probably beat.
Why? You didn't talk about China other than you said that.
So right now we've got China.
Is there still a war in Ukraine? I'm just wondering. I haven't heard anything about it.
I'm telling you, there's not much on the news about it, honestly. Yeah, it's still there, but I could not tell you. Everybody's saying, well, Russia's pulling back. I don't necessarily see that, but I did see that they were allowing aid workers to come in and get civilians out of some of the occupied territories. That's all I have on it. That's it. So we have China buying up tens of thousands of acres recently in Oklahoma, not that they haven't bought it all over the country, and taking this ground and turning it into weed farms, taking it out of food production to weed farms. Great. Wonderful. All good. They're spending a lot of money. People that are selling it to them are happy. Oklahoma comes up and bans ownership of from foreign countries to try to stop some of this. Unfortunately, the Chinese found a loophole that they create a certain business that they control the business can then buy the land. So a bunch of crap. I am so fed up with allowing China to buy Smithfield Foods, other food processing plants, packing plants, ground, all these things, while Congress and the White House, all of those in the political realm that could stop these things and stop the loopholes and pass legislation that would not allow this, do not do it. And I think part of the reason, Ryan, that they don't do it, or a large part, is that pay to play. I think they've got Biden through Hunter and other donations, both Russia and China. They're contributing to the right politicians, and we're allowing it to happen, and they refuse to crank down on China. If they do not, why wouldn't China holds most of our debt? China, that we talked about the food shortage last week. China has 1.5 years worth of stored food to feed every person in their population. We have 6 months.
Do you really believe that?
I do. I do believe that they have that. And the reason I believe it is they've been doing this anytime there was issues in some of our third world countries, mostly Africa, continent countries. What they would do is offer them food to go in and get their natural resources. When their population's starving, they allow them to come in and do whatever they need to do to get that food. So if we're coming into a food shortage, which there is no question it's going to happen at different levels. Again, you're not going to starve, Ryan. You'll be fine. It's going to cost you a lot more, but you're not going to starve. What about these other countries? When China has that amount of grain and food stored, all of a sudden that becomes a huge bargaining tool. They can get into these countries and say, hey, we're going to give you this food. I want to come in and harvest your oil, your minerals, whatever it may be. And you're going to be favorable towards the Chinas of the world, the Russia, the North Koreas, not the US, not the UK. So there's a lot of influence that can be bought. Not that those countries have a military or are going to be able to contribute to anything like that. It's just world perception, and I think world dominance is what they're looking at. So yeah, I do believe that they're there, and I think it's bullshit that our legislative body, Congress, the president, do not do something to prevent us from selling everything to China because they continue to buy it. I'm out. I haven't heard much about our disinformation czar.
I don't even. Did that person still exist? I mean,
Minister of Truth.
Are they still there?
Mary Poppins, whatever you want to call her. I think she's around, but I think she's getting pretty hammered on. Fuel prices are not good. I did see an interview with
2 days. See, now you said I do know this.
What?
For the second day in a row, fuel per gallon has reached an all-time high. For the second day in a row, it went up.
It just continues.
It is now over or at $4 a gallon in every state of the United States.
Yeah, for premium.
On average. I'm not saying like but on average, yeah.
A few minutes ago, I think I paid $5.23, but that was the higher
and it's
grade.
15 cents more than last week.
That's terrible. It's unbelievable. I think that alone is going to bite the Dems in the ass. If people connect to that.
He canceled like one of the biggest oil contracts last week, and he's surprised that it went up 15 cents. But anyway, next.
They're complaining about how the oil companies won't renew the leases or take the leases that are offered. Well, these oil companies are looking at this. In that administration, the White House has come out and said we are going to eliminate fossil fuel in this country. And yet they're yelling at them for not spending millions and millions of dollars to develop more wells. I don't know how they expect that to happen. It's not going to. It's a problem. No question.
I don't know what to
tell
you.
I was able to vent a lot. I'll let you take the rest of the.
I have nothing.
You can take us into the main topic with a few.
Okay, well that's
Beyond
fine.
the Ring Junior sponsors, maybe a top 10.
Yeah, I need to work on that. We might have to do the top 10 at the end because I think I just clicked out of it on accident. Whoops.
Sorry for the top 10. Sorry, guys.
Sorry about your bad luck on that. Anyhow, I do have good news. We do have this is the second week in a row that I can introduce another Region 1 sponsor. And so that means if we could
that is really good.
If we could get one more Region 1 sponsor
remind everybody Region 1 states real quick.
California, Nevada. I don't know. California, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona. I can't read them off. I don't have them in front of me.
Utah in there?
I'm sure it is. But anyway, if we can get a sheep or a pig person.
West Coast.
Yes, there you go. If we can get a sheep or a pig person to step up and sponsor one of those species in Region 1, Region 1 will be fully funded, and then I can turn my attention to 2 and 4 because that's the only other ones that aren't. But since Region 1 has the most shows and the most members, I thought that we might need to get them sanctioned or get them sponsored first. But
and once we started talking about it, they started coming in.
We are very excited to have Red Hills Show Goats from New Mexico as the Region 1 goat sponsor. They are located near Artesia, New Mexico, and their goal is to never stop improving the quality of their goat herd. Their aim is to raise show wethers that compete at all levels, and they proudly support FFA and 4-H programs that continue to influence the stock show youth, and they believe that the young and women in this in the junior livestock show industry are grounded by agriculture will definitely be the leaders of tomorrow. We greatly appreciate Red Hills for their Region 1 goat sponsorship. And part of the deal is that when I gave them their spot for their sponsorship on the podcast, I had to say that Dale used them I used them reserve division champion at a show in West Texas, and I guess Dale used them to win the whole thing, so they like him more than me. But there you go.
That was part of the deal. I like these people.
Yes, I knew Dale likes these people the most. Yes.
I like these people.
Yeah, he did like...
Aren't you in California now?
I am in California right now.
Well, maybe this week. Are you judging any goats?
No, I'm not judging goats.
I was going to say you could use them this week.
It's a county fair in California, and I'm not judging goats, so... I don't think that's going to work, Dale.
No, it's not going to happen.
I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be a pessimist here, but don't think that is going to work out.
Well, we greatly appreciate Red Hills sponsoring and stepping up because we needed those out in Region 1 to make all the awards happen for that.
I have a top
portion
10
of the country.
list. Look at me.
Excellent.
Look how quick I am.
Is there anybody in it from California or Region 1?
It's all of them, basically.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm pretty sure we did lambs last week, and since we're doing lambs and goats, showmanship this week, I'm going to do goats. And again, Reagan Rogers from Gilbert, Arizona is in first. Kiara Rogers is in second. Piper Liska from Arizona is in third. So Arizona's top three.
They're cranking it out there.
Yeah, California... Cameron Shelton is number 4 from California. Then Colby Wilson from Georgetown, Delaware. Paisley Carlson, who we all know that Dale is partial to, from Orland, California, which is actually the county fair I'm judging this week, but I'm not judging goats or sheep. So, Paisley, you're on your own. Good luck, especially if you bought one from Dale.
I know some of those other kids in there. This is a good lineup. Really
Addison
good.
Sharp from Eagle Mountain, Utah. Sophia White of Blythe, California. Finally got a Texas kid. Casey Clages of League City, Texas. And rounding out the top 10. Oh, Mr. Rainbows and Butterflies will be so happy. Natalie Scholl from Anita, Iowa is the 10th person in the GOAT top 10 overall standings right now. So
you gave us 8 out of the top 10 were Region 1. Luckily, we now have a sponsor.
I think Utah's Region 1 too. So I'm saying 7. Delaware's definitely not Region 1.
Yeah. Pretty dominant though.
Yes.
Congratulations, Region 1.
That is that.
I have one more quick announcement. And
no, as you don't get to.
As we're bringing more of the Junior Association sponsors on, we're going to try to do as limited of those on the podcast as we can. But we have a couple sponsors coming up. And we do have a new
I didn't
thing.
prove any of this.
I agree. There is something that we're going to talk about Mr. Boxel-wise that is coming out and maybe has already been announced or maybe on their Facebook page. I'm not sure, but I do not have the information on it. But I will mention it hopefully next week. That is all I have for the moment.
Well, aren't you just full of information?
I am full of information. I have piles of information.
Since he's just so good with his sponsors, he doesn't know anything about them. But he's going to bring more on.
I do not know enough to talk about it yet. I'm just aware that it
So that was just a shameless plug for your boyfriend, is what that was.
A new product that Mr. Boxel's bringing out. That's all.
It was just a shameless plug. Okay, fine. Moving on to the main topic. So last week we did Hog Showmanship, and I don't know if y'all liked it or not, but it got a whole lot of likes and shares and all kinds of things on social media. And I didn't get a lot of comments, and it didn't get a whole lot of I didn't get any hate mail about it, which I was very disappointed in.
I think Clifton's sorting through some of that for us nowadays.
Oh, good. Anyhow, I didn't get any hate mail, but it seemed very popular. And so this is week 2 of 3, and we're going to do sheep and goat showmanship this week. And before anybody gets angry or upset, yes, I do know there are differences in showing sheep and goats, but the basic principles are the same. So, we would just be repeating half the podcast all over again if we did sheep by itself and goat by itself. So don't get y'all's little panties in a ruffle.
You're the one that's always worried about having to have everything the same. You're kind of going against the grain here a little bit.
That is about awards for the BTRJLA, not this podcast.
Oh, got it.
Oh, my God. Okay. You are the goat gurus to start, by all means.
I would love to start
Please,
this off.
Preach.
And this doesn't necessarily apply to goats or just sheep.
Did they bring you a soapbox? Do you have a Bible with you there?
I do not.
Oh,
looking
okay.
around here, I see nothing.
Damn.
Nothing. Nothing. I have a pile on my desk I need to sort through tomorrow that we can use that as something. Okay. What I'd like everybody to remember, and we're talking about showmanship, and we're going to do cattle next week as our part 3 of the 3-part series. It's all about presenting your animal to look its best. This means as many good looks for the judge and try to eliminate any bad looks. This is very simple. This is the basic principle. Let's present that animal so it looks the best it possibly can to that judge. And as we all know, while we're out in that ring or that exhibitor's out in the ring, there's going to be portions of the time that animal looks better than not. And we're going to have certain times that maybe we don't want that judge, or we're doing things where we maybe don't want that judge to see how the animal looks as we're going through that process. So maybe that's confusing, but the goal is let's stop and think about what we're doing, use some common sense, and whether you want to show the faults out, accentuate the positive, or just do a solid professional job, all the above, that's what we continue to have to focus on. It doesn't matter what species we're working with. We need to continue to go that direction. I think we'll cover several examples of that today. Several examples.
I think what Dale's saying is right. Regardless of what you're showing, the whole goal is to maximize the strengths of your animal through showmanship if you can, minimize the weaknesses in your animal if you can, and you can do that a lot and a great deal in all the species. Like just like we talked about the views that you can drive your pig at last week, we're going to go into some of the things on sheep and goat that you can do to help, stuff like that. Again, I think the thing is, and this is just mine and Dale's opinion. Not everybody's opinion is the same. Like we said last week, if showmanship is your absolute goal, the only way to know what's going on with that showmanship judge is either you've shown to that person or find somebody that knows what their pet peeves are, their likes, their dislikes. So you're going to have to do some research, because there are going to be things that you will have to change or tweak depending on who's sorting showmanship, because everybody's a little different and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But I think the big things, again, and I'm not trying to be repetitive from last week, look professional, have that body language and that confidence about you from the moment that you step in the ring. I will say one thing that I forgot to say last week, and it's important in all species. Showmanship begins when you are in the eye shot of the judge. And I can't tell you, I preach this and I don't think many people listen, but I don't care if we're judging sheep or goats or cattle or chihuahuas. I don't care. Whoever is standing in the ring is going to want to get a glimpse of what's coming in the next class. And so they're going to look over there. And if you are there with your sheep and goat and it's standing like a donkey jackass, there's your first impression. Boom. I mean, you can talk to Callie or Peyton Herzog or any of those kids that showed for me. I mean, as soon as I would tell them, and they would be like they were showing in the ring when we're standing outside, because I never wanted that judge to get a glimpse of them not looking like they were serious and having their mind on their game, or more importantly, their animal not being set up. And so that's something to remember. It's not just when you hit the gate.
Ryan, that is truth spoken very, very well. And I think there's as big of a flaw right there. There's more people that can improve right there, that alone, than maybe any of the things we've talked about, because it's common. I will look out there, and 90% of them aren't paying attention to what's going on.
I would say maybe more, but yes.
It's not good. And that as soon as you're in the eyesight of that judge, and again, we're not talking about necessarily how the animal plays. You can relate it to showman and how the animal plays, but you can relate to showmanship. It's just that impression that you're getting. And guess what? And we talked about this before. You're in the eye of the judge. Let's say showmanship's at the end of the day. You're in the eye of the judge if you're out there showing all day to him, if it's the same judge. I'm telling you, if you think that we're not going to reflect back into how you did throughout the course of the day, you've lost your mind. It's going to happen, period. Not only is it going to happen, it makes it easy for us to go out and sort you later.
And like when we're talking about sheep and goats, I'm not saying that you have to be standing in the holding ring with them braced up and ready to go. but you need to be standing there,
Heads up,
heads
professional.
up. Their feet need to be square, etc. Like, and you need to be paying somewhat attention on what's going on in the ring, not on your phone, high-fiving your buddy or any of that stuff. Like, just look like you're trying to make sure that you're on top of things and have that animal looking presentable. No, I don't think they have to be braced up or anything like that, but they need to be square and the head needs to be up, and you need to be concentrating on your business. Because again,
Yes.
every time they look over there and you're not, that's the wrong impression.
I want you attentive to what's going on in the ring and what's going to be going on in the ring.
Yes,
Thinking
absolutely.
about those things, watching what's going on in the ring. Just, you need to give me that impression that, hey, I'm here and I'm going to do everything I possibly can to succeed. And that's
Right.
part of it.
Yeah.
It's that simple. I'm going to talk about something, Ryan, that's a little out of the norm, and I don't know that I've heard people talk about this before, but I noticed it with our children and some others, and maybe I'm wrong, but we can work at home a lot on showmanship. We can practice every night for an hour. We can do all these things with our show animals, and I think that's all good. That's great. That's part of the whole process. Once we started our kids working in the production side of it, actually catching baby kids to give vaccinations, dehorn, catch does to treat, whatever it is, just working them through the chute, moving them from point A to B. It's these animal skills that they better understand in terms of animal handling and animal behavior, that once they're able to work in that, and say you're showing your parents, or you're not on a farm that has that, if you get a chance that you could go work for that goat person or that sheep person down the road, or the breeder that you bought them from, if you could spend a couple of weeks with them in the summer on a mini internship or whatever it is. And some showmen out there can show as well as any and never have been in a situation or production operation at all. But what I'm saying is, when you can get that understanding of animal behavior and how to handle animals, and the just doing it on a large basis day in and day out, all of a sudden you make huge improvements in terms of how you can get in and out of the ring as far as a showman. Is there anything to that, Ryan?
I think a lot of that. I think the biggest problem with that is, Dale's, not everybody's in that situation.
No, exactly. And if you can't be, you can take it this way. And I have a family right now that I'm encouraging, the younger showmen, and they're only going to show a couple shows a year. Guess what, Ryan? Without more ring time, is there going to be much improvement?
No.
And you could work at home forever, and you can't replace that hands-on ring time.
Dale and I disagree with this. He actually doesn't think you should work your lamb and goats at home at all. But I disagree. But I think that, yes, there is a lot of things that you can learn about how to show an animal from the production side, like you were talking about. Again, not everybody has that situation. I do think that being in the ring is the best way to become more advanced, but I'm telling you, I don't even want to tell you the amount of cattle I had on feed in high school, because it was an insane number, and I worked every single one of those. At like my high school years, we had 2 coolers and outside too, and like one half of the barn, I worked every single one of those animals 3 times, set them up 3 times, go get another one. And the next day it was the other one. So I am a believer that you have to practice at home every day.
And that's a lot of animal handling. Not only you're teaching the animal, but you're educating yourself on how to handle every single situation, how to read those animals.
And there are kids that are great showmen, absolutely great showmen, that maybe when you get to that point, you don't have to do it every day. I was just OCD, and probably I didn't have to, but like, I do see even great showmen, when they are helping someone out or doing something else and they've had no interaction with that animal, I can tell. And I'm talking, these kids have won major shows. I'm like, if that's theirs, that dude ain't spent much time with that one right there, because the animal doesn't know them. They don't know the animal. And so that's just something to think about there. But I think one of the hardest things in lamb and goat showmanship is getting those things to lead. And I think it's harder than it is the most difficult in those 2 species, way more than cattle. And of course, pigs are driving, but I think that is the hardest thing. I'm going to let Dale tell you the best ways to figure that out. The one thing that I'm going to tell you on showmanship is that if you know there is a problem with yours not leading, then you probably don't want to be the first in the ring. So if they're not making you go in a specific order and you know yours will follow better than being the lead dog in the sled, you might want to think about that. And again, most of these shows I judge, they ask me, do you want them? And I said, I don't care what order they come in. As long as they're in that class, just put them in there. And I would say a large portion of the kids that are the first one in never thought about that because their animal's not going. As soon as I tell one or the ring steward tells one to move up in front of it, that one will just follow along like everything's perfectly fine.
No, I agree. And Ryan, remember we talked about when you're waiting outside the ring to be attentive and everything positive and pay attention to what's going on in the ring. This is the one example we'll allow, or the one mulligan here. When you have a goat or even a lamb, it's probably more relevant in the goats that don't lead, even worse than it is in lambs, or more so. And you've got that ring steward there at the gate calling people in, asking for somebody to come first. I want you looking the other direction, pretending like you do not hear that person. You totally ignore them until somebody has to go, because it's a train wreck. It just is. And it's not even, there's not a fair way to do it. If you have that goat or lamb that's been to several shows and you know that thing's going to lead out and can lead out first all by itself, and it's a pretty good one and it leads extremely well, I'm impressed when one comes in first and it just hits the ring and it's going, it's head up. It's natural. We're not inhibiting the movement in any way. It's almost leading you. That is a great thing, but there's not a lot of those animals out there. When they do exist, jump right up and say, hey, I'll take the lead. I'm not afraid of this. Otherwise, it's animal instinct that they're going to follow another one better than lead off into something they're uncomfortable with. That's pretty simple. Let's go into most sheep. Obviously, 99% or a large percent of the sheep, we don't have a chain on, we don't have a halter on. We're just leading them with our hand under their chin and maybe our other hand on the back of their neck, and away we go. I want to be cautious. We want their head up, but as we continue to put more and more pressure on that chin to keep that head up and maybe back a little bit so they look cool, a lot of times they're going to stop on us. It's kind of like getting that pig's head up too high. They can't just get out and go out of that front end. So be conscious of that. I want that. I'd love to have that neck come high out of the shoulder and just about a perfect coming vertical out of that shoulder just as best you possibly can, and that chin down and just float. Now, that's not always realistic, but it seems like we for some reason, a lot of these sheep are wanting to go faster than what the person in front of us is going or what the group are going. And we're having to put that chin up a little higher to slow them down. As we put that chin up a little higher, Ryan, all of a sudden the rest of the lamb slows down, fights you, a little bit of a stumble step. Maybe we're not holding the top quite right. There's a lot to that. Maybe if you can, leave yourself some gap as you're coming in the ring and allow you to have just a little more space so you can let that lamb walk out a little more naturally. I think the ultimate goal in both the lambs and the goats in the ring to present to that judge is let's let them walk as uninhibited as we can with as little pressure on their head or on the halter or on the chain so they can go, maybe keeping that head up just a little bit, but let's let them glide out there. And there's nothing better when one just almost leads you. It comes in with that real arrogant, cocky look, kind of a show pony trot around the ring, all just perfect. If we go to goats and your goat works the best on a chain and a way you can go with it, have at it. If you've got a goat on a chain and that one's pulling down and choking out, Ryan, you ever have that experience?
I've seen it a ton, yes.
Every show. Almost every show you'll find it.
I never did it personally, but I only showed like a handful of goats. But no, it never happened to me personally, but yes, I've seen it a ton.
And that's the worst thing. And the harder you pull, the harder that goat's choking out, it becomes terrible. Then the ringman comes and grabs the tail and it just all goes backwards. If it doesn't walk on a chain, try a halter. Maybe it'll walk a little bit better on a halter. And vice versa. If you're coming in the ring and that goat just does not want to walk on a halter, maybe try a chain. Work with the chain at home. Work with both and use whatever fits and whatever's going to allow that animal to move out and work the best between you and the animal. Don't just think that you have to do one or the other. Figure out what works best. Think for yourself. Use common sense. Just because history says this is how we've always done something doesn't mean that's the best way to present your animal. We can continue to do better. We can continue to find new ways. And I think we're going that direction in our junior livestock showmen. They're better now than they've ever been. A larger group are better now, and it just continues to go that way. But think for yourself and make sure everything that you're doing has a practical explanation. It's logical. I'm doing this for a reason. If you're doing something, you don't know what the reason is, don't do it. Educate yourself and figure out what that reason is, or just think for yourself and find a way. So I hear more and more, Ryan, and I know you and I are both big on this. Their showmen are getting so good in both the sheep and goats that they can take a pretty average one and prop them up to look pretty good. It's easier. I don't know how else to explain this. It's easier for me to evaluate the flaws in an animal when it's on the move.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's period. That's any animal. That's not
the better you can get that animal to move, and the more you're screwing with that animal's head and putting pressure on that head, the less likely it is to move out really well. Is that simple enough?
Yeah. Dale talked about whether a halter or chain or whatever. Look, I'm just going to tell you, I do not care what you show your sheep or your goat with. I'm telling you, there's more and more people that are coming in with little wire halters on their sheep, so they'll just lead them around like that show pony thing that Dale was talking about. I don't care. Do what works. I do not care. I do not care.
That lamb walks out better in that. I'm sure some people say, this is terrible. We can't do this. We've never show older kids don't show sheep with a halter. Well, guess what? If it allows that head to come right up and they float out there, I'm in. Yeah. I'm all about it.
And again, this goes back to, you're going to have to find out, because I mean, there's some people in the goat world that literally think halters are made by Satan and whatever. And so like, you're going to have to do a little research and stuff like that. But as far as me, I don't care. I just want the animal to lead out the best it can, all this other stuff, and for you to be the most at ease with it. I've seen a goat shown with no halter, no chain, and that kid was awesome. Like, so, yep. And again, this is just my opinion. I think we get wrapped up too much into that, whether it's a halter, a chain, not a halter, whatever. Do what is going to make that one look the best, act the best, stuff like that. When we're talking about leading, I think what Dale says is so correct about that. You can definitely tell the flaws on the animal way, way simpler and more obviously when they're moving. And a lot of that is because the showmen are so good. That's why, like, when I am judging a show, like, and people, oh, you're so fast or whatever, like, I've watched them walk in, and normally it's pretty much set right there. I mean, unless there's just two super great ones that I'm going to have to go in and like do a little studying on. But I've seen them go, and I've seen what's happened and where their hole is or what's wrong or what's great and all that. And that is on the walk-in in all species. And so, yeah, there is a lot to that. I think the other thing that Dale's talking about, the pressure that's put on the head, I think I agree with him that the less pressure that's put on that animal's head, it is probably going to walk more fluidly. The one thing that, and we've talked about this on the podcast a million times, and I don't know, but if you've got one that's too tight in their top, the worst thing you can do is push it down. Like the worst thing. Like when, like literally that's the worst thing you can do. Whether you're on
the move or propped up.
Yeah, it's the worst thing you can do. All that does is put the red flag on the middle of the back and you're waving it around. Like, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
You and I are the only ones that seem to think this way.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work because it goes right back up and then you do it again. It's a terrible idea. It is a terrible idea.
Now, I'm not saying that if we're down at the other end,
no,
we're not
like
looking
that,
at you and you can adjust
but
it.
I'm saying this is just like you don't want a KF when the judge is standing there. Like, this is...
No, it's really simple. But you know what? I'm seeing more of that happen as well. I just am. I don't know. I can't explain why, and maybe it's just my little bubble I'm watching, but I'm seeing more and more of that being done right in front of the judge, and it's nothing more than waving your hand up there saying, here's my problem. Right here, look.
This is what's wrong with this one, in case you didn't have it figured out. person.
Oh, Lord. I mean, there's nothing wrong with pushing a top down or loining a calf. Let's try to do it when the judge is looking the other direction or down at the other end or whatever it is, if at all possible. And I'm going to take that into setting legs, Ryan, and we haven't talked about that yet. And I've got a whole bunch of things in my mind here, but that leads me into setting legs. And from a showmanship perspective, we have situations here, and this is where you've got to know that judge or do some research or watch them or listen when they're at that show if you're in a later class. There are judges out there, Ryan, that will beat a kid because they didn't reach down and move a leg during showmanship, even if they didn't need to. And there are other showmanship judges out there that if that kid can come out there and they walk into that perfect position and they get into it and it's braced and the feet are set, they didn't have to touch it, I'm going to reward them for doing that because their ability to transition into getting that one stuck was seamless. It was quicker, all of the above. And a lot of times we're talking about let's not do certain things in front of the judge. We may have that lamb or goat set up, and especially in showmanship, and maybe they're doing it because they've heard a judge say, well, I never saw him reach down and reset a leg. If we have a judge that is looking your direction and you think that left rear foot needs to move a half inch forward or backwards, I don't have a problem with you doing that, but good Lord, don't do it while the judge is looking, because a lot of times when you reach back there to do it, and not everybody, but most people, when you reach back there to do it, that front end drops out, and we're going to give the judge a bad look for a very short period of time to go from 97% to whatever you consider to be 100% in terms of where those feet are placed. Is that logical, Ryan?
Yeah, and I agree. I think that what you said at the beginning, because there's some people that want you to physically place the feet and all this other stuff. This kind of goes hand in hand with like what we'll talk about next week on kind of if you can walk them into it, or you can just like tilt their head back, and that will, like we were talking about last week with the pigs, that the steering wheel is the pig whip. Okay, the steering wheel in sheep and goat is the head.
Absolutely.
Like you can literally push one's head back and those feet will go back. I mean, like everything is controlled through the head. And so if you can walk one into it and then just maneuver the head without having to place feet, I'm fine with it, because then you never have to get out of position, all this other stuff. I agree. Again, go back to the same thing that we're going to say 1,000 times. You got to know who's in the ring and what they want. But I think the less muss and the less fuss than you have, and I'm telling you, I stand at more backdrops than anybody doing this, and the thing that get goat and sheep more angry than anything else is when someone goes to place a foot, whether it's the kid holding it or one of the handlers back there. They get mad, and so I think it would be logical that if you could do it without having to physically place feet, you would be better off. But again, that's just my opinion. But I think the thing in terms of placing feet that we don't talk about enough is, so we get them locked in and then we go to brace, and we always want to like rock up or rock back to get that one to, pay attention and get super hard again right before the judge comes. And that's great. And that's fine. But the more we do that, the longer the class goes, the more stretched out we get on the front, because that's where we're pulling from. So don't ever, always just remember to keep checking where those front feet are, because more times than not, the back feet are on point, but now we've got a little stretched out on the front and everything's kind of wompy jawed. I don't even know if that's a word, but anyway. Wonky, that is a word. We'll say wonky.
I love your description there in terms of walking into it and that head being the steering wheel. And I can use our manager as an example, and we're picturing goats.
Why are we using Craig as an example for anything?
Well, he can get up on our picture stand on these goats that have virtually never been set up or handled before, and he can tweak with that head and neck and get them to place their feet about where he wants them. And if he goes back to reach, or we have somebody else, just like you said at the backdrop, Ryan, it does not work very well. I'm not saying that.
I'm telling you, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No, and now if you've got a show lamb or show goat that you're comfortable moving and set, and there's a lot of showmen out there to do a great job. They can reach down and move that leg, and for the most part, not let that chest drop out and things go all bad while they're doing it, and the animals respond to them, and that's great. I have nothing wrong with that, but I also have nothing wrong with that person that understands how to use that head or a little bit of pressure in that chest to get those legs set where you want them. And to me, it's all about, like we talked about in the beginning, as many good looks with no bad looks. And I promise you, most of you out there showing sheep and goats, when you reach down to grab that leg, right then, when you're going, especially that back leg, when you're doing that, something's going wrong on that, going wonky, Ryan, on that lamb or goat for that short period of time.
There's no doubt.
So we need to be smart. If you're going to do that, try to do it when the judge maybe isn't looking. So I'm good any direction. I don't like that a judge will penalize somebody for not setting a leg. And I don't think you should be penalized for setting one, especially if I guess the judge isn't looking, they wouldn't even know about it. There's nothing wrong with either one, but focus on how do we give all good looks as few bad looks as possible. And it just comes down to that way. And I think a lot of younger kids, especially on goats and even lambs, these smaller kids physically can't reach back there to get that hind leg. They're going to understand the good ones will understand how to use that head and neck without doing it. Once they get a little bit older, sure, if that animal's comfortable with it, go back there and set that leg, especially when the judge isn't looking. Or if you can do it and that animal doesn't fall apart on you, all the more power to you. That's great. That means we've really come a long way. So it is a good thing. But I can go either direction, and it's more about let's just not give that judge a bad look, and moving that leg a half inch while the judge say we're trying to decide on those top three, and that judge is focused in on those three, and you decide, okay, my leg's just a little bit off, I'm going to reach down and move it right while he's looking at me. Most of the time, that doesn't work out very well for you.
I would agree.
I can go into another one here, Ryan. I want to talk about their tails and goats, not sheep, obviously. Although in California, they have a little bit of tail on them. You might see some if you're judging lambs this week.
I'm not judging lambs.
Oh, dang. Okay, I'm going to call. We talked about this in pigs once. My good friend Eric Farron talked about the no-fly zone. When we're bringing pigs out to look at from their pens coming in the ring, we don't want those coming up there and interfering. The no-fly zone on a goat is, I don't think you need to be touching that tail. I don't think a ring person needs to be touching that tail. We draw a circle about 5 inches around that tail, and we just don't go near it. Because what happens when you grab that tail? It goes down. It flops down.
And it never comes back up for a while.
Does it totally change the dynamic of that goat?
Yes, it does. Completely.
It is just hard. I know what a goat looks like with its tail down. I know what a goat looks like with its tail up. I promise you, I do. But when I'm out there in the ring and you've got a goat with that tail pinned down, I mean, they are hard to look at, period. So with that said, a happy goat, a tail up is a happy goat. Tail down, angry goat. That's simple. Tail juice is allowed, or products to put on the base of their tail or on their rectum are allowed at some shows where they don't regulate it. And obviously it's going on and it happens. And some of those will pin that tail right up. And if it's allowed, I'm not opposed to it. The only thing I caution people of is sometimes when you use that, if they're not used to it or acclimated to that feeling, sometimes they're going to maybe push that loin up a little bit, or they're going to be a little more agitated and not want to keep those feet set. So there is some downside to it. And I've seen tail juice used, and they go in, they perform perfect, and that tail is just boom, right where it should be. So, but don't assume that's always going to work. In an ideal world, you have a happy goat, you don't touch that tail, you bring it in without anything, and that tail stays up. That is where we'd love to be. In an ideal world. And sometimes tail juice will get them to wag their tail pretty hard, back and forth, like they're just it's eating them alive. So we have to be careful with that.
Clearly, Dale is concerned about the tail juice use of it all.
No, nothing. I mean, we've used it at the jackpot shows where things where it's okay. And some shows, Texas majors, they think that's a terrible thing. Terrible, terrible thing. They'll get down there and smell that tail, Ryan, just to make sure there's no tail juice.
That's lovely.
Most shows don't seem to address it. I think you're better off if the goat doesn't need it. Don't use it, because there's always a greater risk that something that could get agitated. Let's talk about front feet and sheep or goats. But what do you have more of a problem with front feet off the ground in, Ryan?
And me and Dale are probably not going to agree very much on this but I think that you should, it's hard for little kids, but and I say that, and no, I take that back, because the little kid can literally throw its entire weight of its body into that sheep to try to get it to brace and all this stuff. But my whole thing is if you want to prop that thing up and get it back down on the ground right before the judge comes to handle it, that's fine.
No, I think I'm great with that.
I said no problem. That's fine with me. I don't even really get angry or upset if you set them on the top of your shoes. Dale gets very angry. I don't.
I think it's another red flag. Look here, I can't put this one together without getting it up off the ground and setting it on my shoes.
I mean, again, I don't find a whole lot of whatever in that. I just don't. But in general, if you can keep the feet on the ground and do it, then the better off you are.
Always better. And I'm okay. Like Ryan, I'm okay if we get some shavings in that ring and they're dangling at the top. As long as I can they're pretending that the feet are on the ground or close enough that you can, I'm okay. A half inch, so whatever it is.
What is the difference in putting it on top of your toes or dangling it off the ground? It's the same
not
thing.
Dangling, not. They need to pretend
you just
like
said
it's touching those
pretending they were on the ground.
Of those shavings. It just throws that flag out at me that wow, we have to do this to make this one look good. Now let's go to somewhere where we both agree. Have we got in there where they've been 12 inches off the ground?
No, I'm not good. Like I'm not good. I'm not.
Does not work.
I'm telling you, other than the top of your toes, I'm not good anymore. I'm not. I'm just not. Like,
no, Ryan, I've got a story I've got to tell on that. A very short one. So I'm watching a state fair goat show, and we're talking about feet off the ground, and at one time there's breeders out there teaching these kids to show that way. I mean, this is even going to be hard for you to comprehend. There was a goat that went in the ring, obviously walked on all 4 feet, but every time it was time to set up, I'm going to say 8 to 10, maybe a little bit higher inches off the ground the entire time. I mean, that takes a lot of endurance from the goat and the kid to be able to do that. 8+ inches off the ground at their front feet, whether we're just standing there viewing them, handling them, whatever, it didn't matter. And the judge uses that goat to win the whole damn show at a state fair.
Oh my.
How is this possible? See, we must look at things much differently than most. Because to me, you can take a pretty common goat, I promise you. If you bring them 8 inches off the ground and they're driving pretty hard, their top line's pretty good, a lot of things look good. It looks a little awkward or funny because they're so high off the ground, but that will hide more flaws than not. To get a goat to look good with all 4 feet on the ground, that takes a pretty damn good goat, period. And we don't see this much in the sheep. They're much more cooperative about bracing and so forth. But those things that far off, if I have somebody that high up, and again, I don't mind you bring them up 2 or 3 inches and ease them back down right before I handle. That's just some goats you just have to do that with. It is what it is. I'm okay with that. But if you're getting up there higher and you're keeping them up pretty high when I come to handle or I'm viewing them from the profile or any direction, I will tell them one time to please let's try to keep the feet closer to the ground or on the ground. And if they do not listen, they do not do well later.
I don't like agreeing with you, but I still don't understand things that you just said. But yeah, no, the 8 to 10 inches off the ground, that's, big, huge. No, not going to work for me. But I think probably one of the most valuable things that have been said in either of the podcasts that you just said is, I don't care if it's Dale judging or, Mary Poppins or Houdini. But if the judge tells you to do something and you do not do it, then you are doing it at your own risk. Because
even if you were told to do it a different way, if the judge is telling you and you want to do well, you're probably going to conform. If you could give a shit less how you do under that judge and you want to prove a point, have at it. Have at it.
I have told, I can't tell you how many kids, hey, let's get this one back closer to the ground, all this stuff, and I'll let them reset it. I'll do whatever. And if they ramp that thing back up there again, I'm going to handle it and I'm going to go. And it's probably not going to do, because I've let you reset. I said put it on the ground, get it closer to the ground, and you didn't, and then you walk around and we do it again. Yeah, no. But I do think you can apply this to almost anything in a ring, whether it's showmanship or the regular show. If the judge tells you to do something and you care about how you place, even if you do not think it is the right thing to do, you probably better do it.
Absolutely. And we said this in Swine Showmanship, just in case you didn't listen to Swine Showmanship. Don't take that as gospel. That doesn't mean you need to do that at the next show. Every judge can have different opinions. And Ryan and I talked about it in that last episode, that so many times I'll hear a parent afterwards or come up to me and say, hey, little Susie or Johnny did this or that because they were told that such and such fair they had to do it that way. Guys, be careful. Think about do the things that make sense. If you just think about what's going to make that animal look the best in the ring, and there's some common sense logic behind it, it's probably okay. If you're doing it just because you saw somebody else do it and you're not sure why, probably not so much. I want you to watch other showmen and learn from the really good ones, but understand what you're doing and make sure there's a purpose to everything that you're doing. And that is very simple. It really boils down to that. And just because one judge or just because Ryan and I are saying it right now doesn't mean it's going to apply to everybody. No. So if a judge ever gives you the chance or makes a recommendation to better yourself and is telling you what to do, yeah, you probably need to do it.
Since we're talking about front feet and all this other stuff right here, I'm going to tell you one thing that I have noticed a lot. And this is what, when the showmen are so good and the top 4 out there in showmanship, this is, I can't tell you the number of times that this has placed somebody in 3rd or 2nd or win. But we're so conscientious now of making sure that in goats or sheep, that head and neck shoot straight up, out, on top, all those things. We're getting to the point where we rock that nose back too far, and that changes the look. And I'll literally go when I tell them they're 3rd or whatever, I'll just push the nose down on that sheep or goat, and I'm just watch where you're holding that, because the further, when we rock back and we're getting the ears forward, we want to tilt that head back and back and back. So then that nose is getting like straight up in the air. And it does take away from the silhouette. I promise you it does. And it also has a tendency to break them right there where that neck comes in to the spine. And I'll just tap that nose down to where it's level. And they get it and they know it and they see it, but they've never thought of it before. And that's that's a little bitty thing. But I'm telling you, this level of showmanship is that good that we're talking about one's nose is more level than the other sometimes, is what will get you from 1st to 3rd in a showmanship contest.
No, and you say that's a minor thing, Ryan, and it's because I'm taking pictures of goats, thousands of them, too many pictures. But that is so critical. You're so right, Ryan, when they're coming up, and part of it is, and showman, I understand, on a goat or a lamb, to get that head or that neck more vertical and even going back into the body a little bit, it's easier that for some of those animals to do. You can only get them vertical by allowing that nose to come up. When you put that nose down, they're going to step out of it. And so you're trying to find that sweet spot, but maybe ease up on the neck a little bit so we can bring the nose down. Just like pushing that pig's head up too far to the point where we just can't move. We've got to be conscious that at a certain point we have to compromise. But when you can get that neck coming up vertical and you can tilt that nose down, not only, as Ryan say, it changes the look of that head and neck and just the outline, it changes how that shoulder is. It changes the neck junction into the shoulder and how that shoulder is laid in. All of those things change. And it's amazing to me. Ryan talks about this being a minor point. There's so many good ones. That's something that it's an automatic for me. I want the neck up. I want them pushed back into the body a little bit. And I want that chin rotated down. And wow, is that a cool look? I mean, it just hits me hard. It's difficult to do. Some animals are not going to allow you to do it. It just is what it is. But if you can get it done, it's absolutely huge. And while we're on the front end and the head and neck, Ryan, there's something that I want to just absolute bring out, because at the county fair level, jackpot level, even at the state fairs, there's a large number of inexperienced showmen or first-year showmen or even second or third-year showmen that for some reason they think they need to get that animal to brace or to look good, or because maybe that's the perception that they're seeing, they think others are doing, they're trying to pull that animal into their body, into their leg, pulling that head and neck up against them so it's up against their leg tight. That is the opposite of what we want to do. Anytime we're pulling forward like that, that animal's pulling back. When we have a lamb or a goat pulling back on us, we're going to go wank. Everything, the top line, everything's going to go off on you. It does not look right. In an ideal situation, it's much easier with sheep than goats, but you have to get it in the position where you have a hold of that head and you're actually pushing pressure with your hands, getting that head back into the body or more vertical in the neck and back in with the chin down, as well as some lower pressure in that chest if you want to try to keep that top line right or whatever you need to do, whatever pressure needs to do. You can set some of these up to look perfect without even having your leg in them. If you're strong enough, your hands are big enough just to use that steering wheel of the head. But we can put that leg up against them to give them just a little bit more pressure to do what we need to do. Do not grab the head and pull them into you. And for some reason, unfortunately, we have a lot of kids out there doing that. And I know that's the easy thing to do to get them up against your leg, but it's not doing the animal justice in any manner.
I'm just going to bring this up. Are you talking about like how low we get now?
No, I'm talking about just pulling the animal to you for some reason.
That's what I didn't think. I didn't think.
We didn't talk about the logo.
No, I was going to bring that up next. And I was like, I don't know if that's what you were addressing or not.
No, this is just pulling that lamp. I mean, you've seen it, right? When they just try to pull them into them.
Yeah, no.
I don't know how else to explain it. And there's no brace, there's no nothing. It's just a mess.
No, and before I get into the how low can we go limbo of it all, but one thing that I think you can only learn, or the one thing that you're going to need to practice more at home, and this takes two people, is you can think that thing is pushing as hard as it can and get your dad or your mom or your brother or somebody to feel it, and you're going to realize they're going to be like, yeah, we're not getting anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not telling you that I've shown the most sheep and goats in the world. I've helped a lot of people that shown sheep and goats, and I showed plenty of sheep. But for me, every animal was different on how you get them to maximize that out. I don't think it is the same with every animal. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I mean, I think that you have to figure that out on each one. But that's one thing that you got to work at home, because you may think that thing is just like driving like no other. And when the person that's acting as the judge, or when the judge goes to put hands on it, there's not a lot there.
No, exactly. And you know, Brian, I've noticed it more than ever recently when I'm judging that for the most part, the lambs are getting braced. I think we have the lambs a little fatter than maybe we've had in a historical sense. So they have to brace a little harder so we don't get quite so spongy soft on the handle. And many other reasons we're wanting a pretty firm brace, and it makes a difference on that handle, just like you flexing a muscle versus not. What I see a lot, Ryan, is the lamb kids that come over in the goat barn. It looks like they're absolutely nailing it from outside the ring, but I promise you, there's generally less muscle in a goat, and we've got to get a harder brace on a goat normally than you do a lamb. And the goat or the lamb kids that come over are used to a certain amount of pressure that they're applying to their lambs when they go in the ring. I want you to double that when you go to a goat. And I tell kids this all the time. I'm going through Showmanship. It looks like that goat's braced, and they're just kind of there relaxed. They're not really getting into them. And I grab a hold of that thing, Ryan, and there's nothing. There's no brace. There's no muscle contraction whatsoever. And that makes a big difference on a goat. So you've got to drive these goats just a little bit harder, not where their back feet are sliding out on a slick surface or anything like that. You just need that firm brace. Not that you don't in sheep, but I handle fewer sheep that are not being braced hard enough than I do goats. And I guarantee you the families that I work with.
Well, that's because goats pretty much are by and large a lot crazier than sheep.
Yes. And they have less muscle in general. You just need to get them stuck. For a goat to handle well, they need to be, there's very few of them are going to handle well just standing there. It just does not happen good. So be conscious of that at least. Brian, do you have more? I've got a couple things, but
the how low can you go thing. Yeah,
yes, let's go there.
And this is probably going to offend some people, and I'm not trying
hate mail is on its way. I feel it.
But I'm going to be the first to tell you that if you're a great showman and you get that thing stuck and drove and whatever, I don't care if you're out there like in the splits, basically. But as I just said, there's been times that the angle at which a nose has been at has dropped a kid from first to third. I do think that we're to a point that some of us are so spread out and so low to the ground that it looks distracting at times.
Distracting is the key word there.
And I'm not saying that person doesn't get the sheep nail, doesn't get the goat
they may
nail.
have it perfect. And a lot of them do.
But it is distracting at times. And so this would be this is one of those things that is my personal opinion, if there are 2 or 3 kids out there and only one of them, I mean, it looks like they're a gymnast instead of showing a sheep or a goat, they're probably going to end up third in that really tough group because I do think it is distracting at times. And I think getting to that position is the distracting part.
You can maybe even look at it. It's drawing more attention to you than your animal.
I can, that
if
sums it up.
if that one still has that one set up better than everybody else, and it just
then they're going to win.
Yeah, they're going to win.
But
so again, this is personal preference, and
I've used people that done it, but I think Dale hit the nail on the head, and God help me for that. I think it is just what he said. If I'm walking by and my thought is, Jesus Christ, how is that chick that low to the ground? Instead of looking at your sheep, that's a problem.
That's a check mark distraction. And there may be another judge that comes in and says, I just love how this kid's getting this one stuck, on and on. So it's our personal, everything we're giving you is guidance from what we said. I think there's a lot of basic principles that we talked about in the beginning that apply. But remember, this is our personal opinion. This doesn't mean that every judge is going to think that way. But I think for the most part, the less attention to you, if you can go out there and almost be invisible and that animal looks 100% all the time, how can that be wrong?
This is where we'll fundamentally disagree. I think the animal's got to be right. And do I want you to draw attention to yourself? Probably not. But yeah, if I look at you in the face, I don't want you to be invisible. I want you to be looking
from that standpoint. I mean,
you just said you want them to be invisible. How can that be wrong?
I want the eye contact. I want that interaction. I want that I want to win. I don't mean stare me down, killer look, but I want that.
I do.
I'm here.
I want you to try to intimidate me. But I mean, that's the whole thing because I hear that a lot. And I give this advice to people like in showmanship because I talk to every kid. I'm like, hey, for me, your look is amazing. There's going to be some people. They're going to think you look mad. I said, I love it. I love the intensity. But when I have problems, and I know you didn't mean it that way, and I'm just making fun of you, but I've heard so many times, I don't want to see the kid. I want them to be invisible. I just want to see the animal. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It does not.
We should rephrase. I don't want attention drawn to the kid.
There you go. But
you know what?
You know I'm right that people say that all the time.
No,
it does not work that way. It does not work.
I want that facial I want to read that kid's personality.
I want that person to want, like, I can take one look at that kid and say, this kid would rather cut off his arm than lose the class. That is what I want.
Well, you know something, we didn't really distinguish between, we talked mostly about market animals here. We didn't talk about ewes or weather dams or does.
No, I was going to bring that up because I know we're getting long, but that is the one thing that we haven't. And I think this is kind of more towards goats than sheep because, I mean, yeah, I know a lot of breeding people don't brace their sheep, but I see more of them do than not, whatever. Again, I don't know if it's like some horrible faux pas to brace breeding ewes, breeding goats, whatever, all the stuff. I don't know. I don't care. The one thing that I'm going to tell you is be consistent. If you're going to brace them, brace them. If you're not, you're not. And I don't care on that. But the one thing that I will say on this, right here, right now, and this will get more hate mail than anything else, especially in breeding sheep goat competitions, I can't handle the going up and down. Like, you either stay down or you go up. Like, it can't, the one that wants to stand there at the halter for the first little bit and then, I'm going to get down on the ground and I'm going to scratch the belly. No, you got to pick. You got to pick. For me, again, this is my opinion.
See, and I like, on the frame sheep side of the world doesn't bother me. It's okay.
It bothers me.
But what's interesting, I want to clarify a little bit, and I'm going to talk the goat side first. When we're showing does, and if they're full bloods or ABGA does, there's some shows that bracing, and I'm not an expert in this, but I've been to some where they're not allowed to brace them, so you're grabbing that head and doing almost all with the head and not getting your leg up against them and still getting that similar result. But some shows will not. Heck, there's some shows still at county levels that won't let you brace a market goat weather, which is insane, but it exists. But you do have some judges would prefer you do not brace does. So again, you have to adjust. If you're in a weather dam class, whether it be a ewe or a doe, I'm going to say 90% of those judges expect you to get into them, period.
Yeah.
An ABJ full blood or percentage, and that would be similar to a frame sheep. Those frame sheep, I'm saying they're putting a little pressure when the judge handles them, but not a full out brace. And I want to just be very clear. I'm not as familiar with the frame sheep side of showing and the breeding
They
sheep
don't
side
like us
on
anyway.
that. No, I would talk about it, but I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I have enough knowledge in that area to say this is what you should do, and that's why I'm not talking about it. Maybe Ryan has more.
I think the principle is the same. Whatever you can do to make that look the best while you're out there. And like, I know a lot of those frame sheep deals, they let two people go out there, one to hold it, one to place the legs, all this. I don't care. But like, I'm talking about the only thing, if you're ever showing a breeding sheep or a breeding goat, to me, do not go up and down. You pick where you're going to be.
You're pretty firm on that.
I'm very firm on it. And I'm telling you, you got to pick.
About like setting that goat on your toes for me.
I just pick. Don't. This is not an amusement park ride, people. We don't. It's not the Tilt-A-Whirl. We don't go up and down. Like, just pick.
Oh my! Well, I think that's good. This was good, Ryan. Our part 2. I hope it's well received. I hope we covered enough of the basics and a few individual things, and hopefully it's
I
something
hope so
that
too.
will...
Because again, I'm going to say, like we said last week, this is going to cover showmanship for at least a year. So, like, when we ever get
no more questions,
we're going to say revert back to.
Yeah, this is true.
Before we go into Dale's favorite part of the regular scheduled programming, which is question and answer, I do want to thank Leonard Truck and Trailer. No, it's going to be way more times than that because there's I don't know how many podcast spots they get.
Do you know how much money they threw at the junior?
Exactly, I know. They're the largest BTRJLA donor so far. And so, yeah, they're not out of podcast spots, and I can't say thank you.
No, they have an unlimited number. They can come in whenever they choose.
Right, to Leonard Truck and Trailer. They are dedicated to providing the best service, selection, and value. Their efforts are focused on meeting and exceeding customers' expectations every day because they know that their continued success relies on their ability to satisfy every customer. They are committed to being your one-stop trailer source with the largest selection of trailers in the nation, on-the-spot financing, custom vinyl department, in-house warranty department, and comprehensive parts and service department. All your trailer needs, Leonard Truck and Trailer is the place you should go. They have been wonderful at sponsoring not just us, but all the junior livestock industry, and we cannot thank Mr. Leonard, his family, and his company enough. So if you're looking for a trailer, hit up Leonard Truck and Trailer.
Excellent. Thank you, Leonard Truck and Trailer. Greatly, greatly appreciated. It is time for question and answer. The first one, Ryan, I'm not sure. I think this person maybe submitted it kind of as a topic suggestion, but kind of a question and answer. I think that I think we've covered this at least once somewhere. So I'm going to throw it in the question and answer, and I think you can just, boom, put it to rest. In a few words, it'd be done. Let's talk photography etiquette.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Should exhibitors screenshot pictures taken by an official show photographer with the watermark on it? How much is too much for photos? I assume how much do they charge is too much where they don't buy them, they just screenshot them.
I can't tell you how much is too much for photos. I don't know because I know what those cameras cost. I don't know what the rest of it is and all that stuff. I cannot honestly, and I tell you, I bought pictures of me judging, or we've been at shows showing stuff. I bought pictures from probably, I'd say 85% of the photographers out there, and I don't remember one always going, Jesus, they're higher than the other ones. I don't remember that. What I can remember is this one's not up here as quick, or man, I wish they'd get these photos up. That's here and there. That's what it is. The first part of this question is real important. And I've said this on here, and I'm going to say this again. Nothing makes me more pissed off than when I see someone post on social media, a picture of their kid showing or a backdrop photo and the watermarks on it because you didn't pay for the photo.
This doesn't get you fired up, does it?
Oh, God. It literally annoys me to no freaking end. Every single one of those people that are photographers in the livestock deal, They came up in this thing. It's not like, they were out there taking pictures of lotus flowers and said, oh, I think I'll be a cattle photographer today or whatever. No, they were brought up in this community. They did this, whatever. They love this industry and they have a God-given talent for taking pictures, whatever. You have no idea how much those cameras are. Dale can tell you how much those cameras are. They're high. I'm talking high dollar. Like, as expensive as some of the animals that are parading around out there in the ring, high dollar.
And think about them travel. I mean, they're doing everything the judges are to get to the shows.
Travel, all this other stuff. Buy the damn picture.
I am with you.
Or don't post it. Just don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
Here's the thing. You've all got a camera on your phone. Yeah, that one, the photographer's going to take way 100,000 times better. But I promise you, I would much rather you take one with your phone and post that on social media than steal. And that's what you're doing. You are stealing that photographer's work.
I think you answered that well. I suspect that this would this was a good way to get you into this. Okay, I'm going to go just as easy now on the next one, and I guess I should have thought about this more. I was trying to look for sheep and goat ones. So here it is. The next two questions, we've already answered them a little bit. You can recap it.
Mm-hmm.
Based on your last podcast, I assume you'll be doing all things lamb and goat showmanship.
We were going to skip them.
I've had several discussions about entering the ring first, in the middle, or last. I like my kids to enter early so they can set the pace depending on how their lamb looks, best walking, fast, slow, all those things. If they're the first person the judge sees, they don't have to constantly move up and reset. Does that make sense for you, Ryan?
Yes, that does make sense.
As they're pulling,
I don't know. I don't think that's the right answer, maybe, for everything. But yeah, I understand what she's saying.
So with this, and his thoughts are, where do we want to send them in at? Do we want them first? Do we want them in the middle? Do we want them last?
I think it depends on that animal. If that animal will walk well, that's fine. And I can relate this back to cattle showing. I always want to be in the front 5, but I don't want to be first. I don't care if mine walks perfect. I don't want to be first. I want to be in the front 5, though, because I want to do whoever this is saying. I want to make sure that we're seen. I've set the tone with that animal or that kid's animal. I want all that. I want to be in the front 5 every time. I don't want to be first. And we take ours to 9 million shows, and they all know how to walk. I still don't want to be first because, especially at a major show, and I'm just going to tell you, like Houston, if you're the first one, the animal is literally looking at themselves on the big screen. And sometimes because they have the Jumbotron going, sometimes that freaks them out. I don't know. Like, I want to be in the front 5 every time. I don't want to be first. If your lamb or goat does not walk at all, then you don't need to go first. And I get what she's saying about moving up and resetting and all that stuff. That's why I always want to be in the front 5, because you're not going to have to do that as much as if you are at the back. But again, I know there's been cattle, and I'm telling you, in the sheep and goat thing especially, there's a lot of animals that I've seen that need that reset. They won't hold in position the whole time. They need to walk around or walk up and get it redone. So again, I think it's depending on your animal. I'm telling you, there are lots of sheep and goats that are not going to stay there in that position the entire class. So if you're in the middle and they're pulling from, ones out and reset, that's not a terrible thing.
Nope, I would agree. That's a great answer, Ryan. Absolute great. I think if you and I understand, Ryan, I would be very hesitant to go first because you're
I don't ever want to go first.
You're opening the door, even though nothing may go, you're opening the door and allowing something to go wrong.
Right.
You're giving it a better chance. Even though it may be low, you're taking some risk.
As long as there's an animal in front, that one's taking the risk, and it's not mine.
Now, if you're willing to gamble and take that risk, and that animal is just dead on the move and just killer, wow, it's going to hit me pretty hard, period.
It's going to hit you the same if they're in the front 5.
And I am good with where Ryan says that front 5 because...
Hold on. Before I forget. No, hold on. And now I will say this. And this is going to be... A lot of you people are going to like whatever. But I'm telling you, we do this at Texas major shows. We try to position ourselves to where, like, the one in front of us probably not going to get as strong a look as what ours is, because you don't want to run 3 badass animals right there to the judge because somebody's not going to get a strong look because he's going to be like, oh, hell, or she's going to be like, oh, my, whatever. So I'm telling you, there's a lot of thought that goes in where this thing gets positioned when I'm doing it.
There's a psychological component here from the judge that if you have an average one on the other side of you,
you look even better.
We'd like to think we can evaluate you as an individual, but I promise that that's going to come into play. It just does.
No, I'm saying,
even no matter how good we think we are at studying, I'm telling individual for individual.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I forgot about that. But yeah, anyway, go ahead and finish your question. Sorry about that.
I think no, I'm good with all that. The last one comes to us from Amanda, and I guess we didn't necessarily answer this. It's a goat question. Why do people show goats with chains?
Why do they show goats with chains? Because lots of goats work well on chain. Lots of them don't.
I think she's wondering how did it
start?
I don't know. It's a 6-word question. I don't know.
I don't know how it started, but that's all. I'm going to assume because we've had breeding goats a lot longer than we had market, and we've had full bloods and stuff like that. I would assume that the chains started back then and they crossed over. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know how it started. I think that when the market weather goat things really started taking off, whatever, everybody thought chain. But then we got these spikes on the chains, and the chains did all these other things, whatever. I think now there's almost as many that show with halters. And again, it's like we said in the podcast, I think you got to do what works best for that goat. I don't know how it started. I'm going to assume that it started because the other areas in the show goat world were using chains, and that's how it got started in the market weather goat thing. That's what I would assume.
I never thought about it very deep, but I think what it goes back to, and it makes sense to me now. Before meat goats ever came to this country, okay, we had dairy goats that were being shown, and dairy goats were always shown on chains.
Okay, see, that's what I figured.
Yeah, so it was just following what dairy goats did. We carried into the meat goats, but why wouldn't you follow like a lamb on a halter, I guess? I mean, at home in the barn, I don't think very many people, unless some will leave the chains on them, they can grab them, move them from one pin to another or whatever. But most of the time, you're going to go put a halter on that goat to move it from point A to B.
I would agree with that.
I don't know why logically that it wouldn't have been a halter versus a chain other than tradition that bounced from the dairy goats to the meat goats. So that Amanda, that's the best answer I have. And I think some goats show better on a chain. Some goats show better on a halter. Some goats show better barehanded like a sheep. So whatever works best. But I think that's how it became the way it is. And there has been a progression where there's a lot more of them showing on halters now than there were 10 years ago. So I think people are figuring out to use whatever works best. Ryan, that was good. Very good. I enjoyed our second part. I look forward to cattle showmanship next week. I hope by then we'll have a UFO that parks itself right here in my backyard. I'll have some more evidence for you, and away we go. But until then, be safe.
Y'all come back now, you hear?